David, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so glad to have you. Can you share with us a little bit about the Our Fund and some of the work that you all are doing in South Florida?
Sure. The R Fund Foundation is an LGBTQ community foundation. It's one of a handful in the country. So it follows the community foundation model, philanthropists from a geographical area who care a great deal about that area, and we help them carry on the values by which they live their lives. We're a community within a community. I always say we're similar to a Jewish federation. So there's a trust that people have in passing along the wealth that they accumulated during their life to like-minded folks to distribute that wealth when they're no longer here, and that's what we do.
And so let's kind of get into it a little bit. A Convenient House survey says that LGBTQ plus youth make up only 7% of the youth population,
Right.
but make up 40% of the unhoused in America. Can you share with us, some of the factors that have led to those disturbing statistics?
And I'm afraid that that number is even higher than 40%. But I think a
Mhm.
lot of it revolves around the fact that we're talking about a population that is often not accepted by their family, by their church, by their community, by their school. So I think there's a tendency for the youth that we're talking about to end up homeless, right? Unhoused. They're living life on the streets. They're living life with friends because they're not welcome in the place that they grew up. I always say there are a lot of minorities who at least can lean on their parents, minority community who can lean on their parents to tell them about the experience that they had to overcome the hardships in life. LGBTQ youth have the opposite. The people who, you think that they would go to first to seek help and advice are often the people they're most afraid to come out to. So I think that number is probably higher than 40%, and it's an extremely vulnerable population.
And even looking very specifically in South Florida where you are, what does that problem look like there?
So because South Florida, because the climate is the climate, I think that more unhoused people across the country, including youth, end up in places like South Florida, California, where, especially South Florida. I mean, I know that we're in the state of Florida, which is, maybe a purple red state, but South Florida is extremely progressive. So I do think that people tend to end up in our area because they're seeking a better life, and they think they might find it in sunny Florida.
And so the Our Fund is working on an amazing project called Sunshine Pride House to provide a place of shelter for and resources for the community. Can you tell us how this all came to be?
So right before COVID began, a donor came to our fund foundation, Michael Kalb, and he had this vision that he wanted to create an actual house for unhoused LGBTQ youth. We had a program running at the R Fund Foundation for several years where we raised money to give to nonprofits, and in particular, an organization called Underserved in Fort Lauderdale. We gave them resources, money, to go out and help unhoused youth stay off the street with hotels, with clothing costs, with transportation costs. And it was effective, but it wasn't an actual roof. Every time we would go out and fundraise for that project, people would say, "Well, where is the house?" And we'd say, "Well, there's not an actual house." Michael Kalb changed that conversation for us. He came forward with a substantial gift that would allow us to purchase a property in South Florida. We convinced Michael Kalb to try this for 1 year. We've been renting a facility for a year, a six-bed facility in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And with the resources he provided us, we just helped purchase a 12-bed facility that will launch in January. And it's owned by the Sunshine Cathedral, which is where the name Sunshine comes from. Sunshine Cathedral is one of the oldest MCC churches in the country. And in South Florida, it's largely seen as a community center. They do a great job of bringing our community together. They were a natural partner for this. And we're working with two other nonprofits, SunServe and Flight Center, who provide wraparound services for the 12 youth who will be staying there so that they can be provided a brighter, more promising future.
And how do you see the Sunshine Pride House being a safe haven? And how can it have an immediate impact on the marginalized youth who arrive there?
So a couple different ways. We're clear, right? The 12 beds are not going to change the direction of this problem that we're encountering across the country and especially in South Florida. But I do think that this will provide a model for general population youth facilities to understand and adapt to having larger populations of LGBTQ youth. In our research that we did in the general population on house facilities, what we found was that they divide everything in boy, girl, male, female. They've been dealing with that population for years. And these are organizations that have done a tremendous amount of good in our community. And I don't mean to call their motives into question, but I think their practices are probably not well suited for the diversity of LGBTQ youth that are starting to discover their gender in ways that previous generations had not. So I think, first of all, it's the 12 beds that we're providing, it's the wraparound services, but it's also this model of how you can deal sensitively with LGBTQ youth in a culturally competent manner.
And you talked about the facility some, but like, what about the resources available at the facility? What do those look like?
So we have an organization called Underserved. It's been around for 25 years. It supports LGBTQ mental health in South Florida. They have a specialization in LGBTQ youth. So they've been dealing with this population for decades. They have an LGBTQ youth center blocks away from this property that we purchased. And so they've been providing these wraparound services for years, everything from STD, mental health, job training, GED training. They've had these services running at their organization for decades. Now that they can apply them to this one specific facility where the needs are so much greater.
We talked about it a little bit. Unfortunately, Florida is a hotspot for anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and laws right now. But how can working on that community level, can that change the tide, and has it?
So, it's interesting because we're in South Florida and we think of ourselves as a very progressive area. Mm-hmm. But because of the policies that have come down from the state, the really misguided, vague, poorly written policies, it's thrown our entire progressive community into a lot of confusion, which was intentional. But we're working our way through it. The Our Fund Foundation, we grant out between $1.5 million and $2 million a year to LGBT causes in South Florida. It's a lot of money. And I think our community has come together in a way that this administration probably had never imagined we would. And you're seeing court victory after court victory after court victory, because all of this legislation that was passed is, of course, anti-constitutional. I mean, you can't take away the rights of parents to provide healthcare for their children. You can't take away a lot of the rights that they're trying to take away from LGBTQ youth, freedom of expression. So in time, we will win all of these legal battles. We know that. But in the meantime, we're faced with having to deal with the complete shitstorm that's been created by this administration.
And how can people get involved with the Sunshine Pride House and even our fund?
So I would reach out to our fund at the ourfundfoundation.org online. This is a giving priority for us right now. We're going to need to raise $250,000 a year to provide for the 12 LGBTQ youth at this house. So that's an ongoing fundraising initiative that we have at the Our Fund Foundation. The more money we raise beyond that, the greater the likelihood is that we can expand this to 2, 3, 4 facilities. There's another facility next door, another 12-bed facility that we have our eye on. We need a couple more large donors to come forward, but that will happen. We have 2 donors right now, Michael Calb and Terry Merlin, who have stepped forward with major gifts. We also have a number of donors in the Our Fund Foundation circle who have said this is a priority for them and are giving generously to this cause already.
And David, I'll let you have the final word. Anything else you want to share?
I want to say, as a gay man, I look back at my youth and the struggles that I had, and mine were, I come from privilege. I had parents who were accepting, and it gives me a great deal of satisfaction now to be working in this environment and helping another generation of LGBTQ youth who are facing much greater challenges than I had in my lifetime. And, I always say that the Our Fund Foundation is a place that those who have done well can do good. And this is a particular instance where I think that really kind of is crystallized, that moment where we have a lot of donors coming forward who have done very well in their lives and in their careers. And to see them give back in this manner to a cause that means so much to them, that can really not just improve lives, but save the lives of LGBTQ youth, is really gratifying at this time.
Well, David, we want to say thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for the work that you all are doing for the community. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for watching The Advocates. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store to stream us live, and you can even watch us on YouTube. Thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Dean.